A lightsaber falls from a dying hand. The sound it makes as it hits the cold temple floor echoes across 1,000 years. Somewhere in the darkness, a Padawan screams for a master who cannot answer, who will not answer, who has already failed. Close your eyes and see it. Ancient Jedi temples burning against the night, the greatest teachers in the galaxy watching their students fall to darkness, one by one, generation after generation. Masters who moved mountains with the Force, yet could not save the one soul entrusted to their care. The Chosen One himself, kneeling before younglings with an ignited blade. A grandfather's legacy poisoning his grandson, the cycle spinning forward, always forward, never breaking. But this is not a story of the Sith. This is something far more tragic. This is the story of how the Jedi destroyed themselves from within. In the sealed archives of Ossus, there exists a recording, a holocron so dangerous that the Council ordered it buried beneath centuries of dust and lies. On that holocron, a Jedi Master speaks. His voice trembles as he confesses to failures spanning millennia. He names names: Dooku, Anakin, Ben Solo, students who became monsters, and then he asks the question that haunts every frame of that recording. What if the Jedi Order itself was the poison? What if every master who failed their Padawan was simply following the teachings exactly as they were meant to be followed? What if the greatest peacekeepers in galactic history were actually creating the very darkness they swore to destroy? That holocron was sealed, locked away, forbidden. But tonight, we open it. Tonight, you will hear the confessions of masters who watched their Padawans fall. You will walk through the burning temple on the night Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader. You will stand beside Obi-Wan Kenobi as he realizes, too late, that love without understanding is just another form of abandonment. You will witness the moment Luke Skywalker ignited his lightsaber over his sleeping nephew and set the galaxy ablaze once more. And you will discover why it was always going to happen this way. The Force does not forget. Every failure leaves an echo. Every broken Padawan becomes a warning that future masters ignore. The pattern repeats. The cycle turns. Ancient temple corridors remember the sound of children crying. Meditation chambers hold the ghosts of students who begged for help and received only silence. This is not just about Jedi and Sith. This is about what happens when teachers demand perfection from students they refuse to understand. When institutions value tradition over truth. When masters forget that their Padawans are not vessels to be filled with doctrine, but souls that need to be seen. Before we journey into these forbidden archives, I want to welcome you personally. Tonight we explore one of the most heartbreaking truths in Star Wars history. How the greatest masters in the galaxy repeatedly failed the students who trusted them most. From Yoda to Obi-Wan to Luke Skywalker himself. This is a story of tragedy, hubris, and the devastating cost of refusing to change. So before you settle in, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Here is something that surprised me. Nearly 71% of people who watch these deep dives never hit the subscribe button. If you are enjoying these stories, if they help you sleep or simply give you a new perspective on the galaxy far, far away, subscribing truly helps this channel grow and lets me create more content like this. Also, I would genuinely love to know where in the world you are right now and what time it is as you listen. Are you drifting off to sleep in Australia? Winding down after work in Europe? Starting your day in Asia? Drop a comment and let me know. Building this community of Star Wars lovers across time zones is one of my favorite parts of doing this. Now, get comfortable, dim the lights, let the weight of the day fall away, wrap yourself in your blanket, and prepare to hear the forbidden truth. The archives are open, the holocrons are waiting, and the Force is about to reveal its darkest lesson. Let us begin. The year is 35 ABY. The war against the Final Order has ended. Rey Skywalker has taken the name and the burden of the family that shaped galactic history for 3 generations. The Sith are defeated. The Empire is ash, but in the aftermath of victory, questions remain. Questions about why the Jedi fell, not once but again and again across 25,000 years of history. You are a Force historian. One of the few individuals in the galaxy with both the clearance and the courage to ask forbidden questions. For months you have been following whispers, encrypted references in recovered Imperial archives, coded messages hidden in Jedi texts that survived Order 66, fragments of a collection that was supposed to have been destroyed. The failure archives. Your search has led you here to Ossus, a world that was once home to the greatest library in Jedi history. 10,000 years ago, the Sith destroyed this place. The great library burned. Millions of texts and holocrons were lost forever, but the planet survived. And in the decades since the fall of the Empire, archaeologists have been excavating the ruins. Most of what they found was ash and broken stone. But 3 months ago, a team drilling beneath the remains of the Master Archive struck something that did not belong. A vault sealed by the Force itself, wrapped in preservation fields that had kept it hidden for over a millennium. The Republic archaeologists could not open it. The new Jedi could not sense what was inside. But you could, because you were not looking for glory or ancient power. You were looking for truth. The vault is open now. You stand at its entrance as the last light of Ossus's sun fades beyond the horizon. The air here tastes like dust and time. The ruins stretch out behind you, jagged silhouettes against the darkening sky. Broken columns that once held up chambers where thousands of Padawans learned to touch the Force. Shattered statues of masters whose names have been forgotten by history. The temperature drops as you step inside. Your breath mists in the suddenly cold air. Glow rods activate along the walls, sensing your presence. They flicker to life one by one, revealing a corridor that descends deep into the planet's crust. The walls are lined with shelves, and on those shelves rest hundreds of holocrons. Blue light emanates from some, red from others. A few glow with colors you do not recognize. Purple, green, gold. Each one is a repository of memory. Each one contains testimony from masters and students across the millennia. A voice speaks from the darkness ahead. Old, wary, sad beyond measure. I wondered when someone would finally come. You are not alone. The figure that materializes before you is translucent, a Force ghost, but not one you recognize from the histories. This is not Yoda or Obi-Wan or any of the famous masters whose spirits are said to linger at the great Force nexuses. This ghost wears robes from an era you cannot immediately place. Their face is lined with age, but their eyes are sharp. Who are you, you ask? I am the Keeper, the ghost replies. The one who gathered these records, the one who tried to warn the Council before it was too late. They gesture to the holocrons surrounding you both. Do you know what this place is? This is where the Jedi kept the confessions they did not want the galaxy to hear. The testimonies of masters who watched their Padawans fall to darkness. The journals of students who begged for help and received only doctrine. The recordings of council meetings where they chose reputation over truth again and again and again. The Keeper moves deeper into the vault. You follow. The corridor opens into a vast circular chamber. At its center stands a pedestal, and on that pedestal rests a single holocron, larger than all the others. It pulses with a sickly light. That one, the Keeper says softly, contains the complete pattern. 25,000 years of Jedi history. 25,000 years of the same mistakes repeated endlessly. Masters failing Padawans, students becoming monsters, the Order wondering why the Force had abandoned them. never realizing they had abandoned themselves. You step closer to the central holocron. Your hand hovers over its surface. You can feel the weight of the knowledge contained within. The grief, the regret, the stubborn refusal to change. Why was this sealed, you ask? Why hide it? The Keeper's expression grows darker, because the Council realized the truth and could not bear to face it, because admitting these failures would mean admitting that the Jedi Order itself was flawed at its foundation, because it is easier to blame the dark side, or fate, or the weakness of individual students than to look at the system that created those students and ask why it kept producing the same result. They meet your eyes. You came here searching for answers. You will find them, but be warned. Once you understand what the Jedi truly were, once you see the pattern that governed their rise and fall, you cannot unsee it. This knowledge will change how you understand everything. Every hero you admired, every villain you feared, every student who fell, and every master who could not save them. The Keeper places a ghostly hand on the central holocron. It opens, light floods the chamber, and in that light, you see the first vision. A young man with dark hair and intelligent eyes, kneeling before a diminutive green master. Count Dooku and Yoda. The first failure. Let us begin with a master who had 800 years of wisdom, the Keeper whispers, and still could not hear his student screaming. The holocron's light shifts. Images flicker across the chamber walls like ghosts made of memory. You are no longer standing in the vault. You are watching history unfold. The Keeper's voice guides you through the visions. The Jedi Order was 25,000 years old when it finally collapsed, but the seeds of that collapse were planted at the very beginning. Watch. The first image solidifies, a temple on Coruscant, but not the one you know from the Clone Wars era. This structure is older, more ornate. Its spires reach impossibly high into a sky filled with ships that look ancient even in this ancient time. Inside the temple, a master instructs a young student. The lesson is about detachment, about controlling emotion, about perfecting the self until nothing remains but pure connection to the Force. This was the foundation, the Keeper explains. The belief that to touch the Force, one must first shed their humanity. Emotion was weakness. Attachment was poison. Love was the path to the dark side. They taught this to children. Year after year, generation after generation, and year after year, generation after generation, students broke under the weight of impossible expectations. The vision shifts forward in time. Decades pass in seconds. You watch as the temple grows, as the Order expands across the galaxy, as thousands of Force-sensitive children are brought to Coruscant and taught the same lessons their predecessors learned. And you watch as some of them fall. The first name the Keeper speaks makes you shiver. Revan was brilliant, perhaps the most naturally gifted Jedi of his generation. His masters praised his connection to the Force, his understanding of combat, his strategic mind, but they never taught him wisdom. They taught him power and called it righteousness. They taught him to trust his instincts, and then wondered why he questioned their authority. The vision shows a young man with dark hair and fierce eyes. He stands before the Jedi Council, arguing passionately about something. The Council members shake their heads, dismissive, certain in their ancient wisdom. The Mandalorian Wars were tearing the Republic apart. Entire worlds burned while the Jedi Council debated and meditated and did nothing. Revan begged them to act, to save lives, to be the guardians they claimed to be. The Council refused. They said intervention would lead to attachment, that choosing sides would compromise their neutrality. So Revan made a choice. The image shows Revan walking away from the temple. Other Jedi follow him. Young knights and Padawans who believe that action mattered more than doctrine. They march to war. They save the Republic, and in saving it, they doom themselves. Revan fell to the dark side, but not because the dark side seduced him with promises of power. He fell because the light side offered him nothing but inaction and philosophy while people died. The Jedi taught him that emotion was weakness, so when he finally felt the rage and grief of watching innocents slaughtered, he had no tools to process those feelings. He had only suppression, and suppression always breaks eventually. The Keeper's voice grows heavier. And then there was Malak, Revan's closest friend, his brother in all but blood. Malak followed Revan into war because he trusted him, loved him. The Jedi had taught them not to love, but they were human. They loved anyway. And when Revan fell, Malak fell with him, not because of his own corruption, but because his entire identity was built on following the one person he was never supposed to attach himself to. You watch as the friendship between Revan and Malak curdles into something poisonous, as trust becomes suspicion, as love becomes betrayal. Malak's face twisted with rage and grief, screaming at his former friend. The vision darkens further. Time accelerates again. Another name surfaces from the depths of history. Exar Kun. If Revan was the Jedi's failure of doctrine, Exar Kun was their failure of arrogance. The image shows a young man studying ancient Sith texts in secret. His master knows but says nothing, confident that proper Jedi training will protect his student from corruption. That confidence proves fatal. Exar Kun's master believed that knowledge of the dark side was necessary to truly understand the Force. He allowed his Padawan to study Sith teachings, to explore forbidden temples, to dance along the edge of darkness. He believed his student was special, strong enough to resist temptation, wise enough to learn from evil without becoming evil. The vision shows the moment it all goes wrong. Exar Kun standing over his master's body. The older Jedi's expression is not anger or fear, it is surprise. Even in death, he cannot believe his perfect student would do this. Khan did not just fall to the dark side, he became a plague. He corrupted other students, convinced them that the Jedi were holding them back from true power. Within months, dozens of Padawans had abandoned their masters and flocked to his banner. The Jedi Order went to war with itself. Master fought student, brother fought sister. The temple ran red with the blood of its own children. The Keeper pauses. The images freeze. Do you see the shadow forming? The echo that will repeat across millennia. You nod slowly, understanding, beginning to crystallize. The Jedi created a doctrine that denied basic human needs. Connection, understanding, compassion for oneself as much as for others. They took children young enough to shape completely, severed those children from their families, taught them that their natural emotions were dangerous, that questions were weakness, that obedience to the Order was identical to serving the Force. And then they acted shocked when those children grew into adults who either broke under the pressure or rebelled against the system entirely. The chamber fills with more images now, hundreds of them, thousands, faces of Jedi from across the centuries. Some you recognize from historical texts, most are anonymous, forgotten casualties of a war the Order refused to acknowledge. It was fighting with itself. After Exar Kun's fall, the Council implemented new restrictions, stricter oversight of Padawan training. Forbidden texts were sealed away. Masters who questioned doctrine were removed from teaching positions. The Order became more rigid, more afraid, more certain that if they just controlled their students tightly enough, the darkness could be prevented. The Keeper's translucent form seems to grow more solid with anger. But you cannot prevent darkness by forbidding light. You cannot teach balance by demanding perfection. The Force is not perfection. It is life. Messy, complicated, emotional life. And the Jedi Order spent 25,000 years trying to perfect something that was never meant to be perfect. The visions begin to move forward through time again. Faster now, you glimpse fragments of other failures. A master ignoring a student's cry for help. A Padawan expelled for forming a romantic attachment. A council meeting where concerns about training methods are dismissed without discussion. A young Jedi taking their own life rather than face one more day of being told their feelings were wrong. These were not isolated incidents. This was the system functioning exactly as designed. The Jedi Order believed that the Force required purity, detachment, emotional control so complete that it bordered on emotional death. And when their students could not achieve that impossible standard, the Order blamed the students, never the teachings, never the structure. Always the individual who was simply too weak, too flawed, too human. The images slow, coalesce. You find yourself looking at a specific moment in time. A young boy being brought before the Jedi Council. He is perhaps 8 years old, gifted, powerful. The Council sees great potential in him. They take him as a Padawan immediately, assigning him to their wisest master. The boy's name is Dooku. The Keeper turns to you. The ancient failures set the template. But if you want to understand how deeply the rot ran, how even the greatest masters could not escape the poison they themselves had created, you must see what happened to this boy, Yoda's greatest student, the Order's brightest hope. The vision pulls you forward into a new chapter of failure, into the story of how wisdom and compassion can exist in the same heart as blindness and rigidity. Let me show you how 8 centuries of knowledge could not save one brilliant soul from drowning. The holocron pulses. The next testimony begins. Count Dooku was 8 years old when the Jedi took him from his family on Sereno. He was a noble child, heir to wealth and power that meant nothing compared to the gift burning inside him. The Force sang in his blood. The Council recognized his potential immediately. Master Yoda chose him personally. For a boy raised in privilege, being selected by the Grand Master of the Jedi Order should have felt like an honor beyond measure. And it did. At first, Dooku threw himself into training with the fierce dedication of someone who believed he had found his true purpose. He studied every text Yoda assigned, mastered every form of lightsaber combat, meditated until his mind could touch the Force with the delicacy of a surgeon and the power of a storm. Yoda was pleased. Here was a student who listened, who learned, who embodied everything the Order claimed to value. But Dooku had a flaw. He cared too much. The vision in the holocron shows a teenage Dooku standing on a Coruscant balcony. Below him, the city planet sprawls endlessly. Trillions of souls living and dying in the shadow of towers that scrape the sky. From this height, it all looks beautiful, orderly, peaceful. Dooku sees something else. He sees the lower levels where sunlight never reaches, where the Republic's justice does not extend, where beings suffer in darkness while the Senate argues about trade routes and taxation. He brings his concerns to Yoda. The Keeper's voice narrates what you are watching. Master, there is suffering in the lower levels, slavery in everything but name. Should we not act? Yoda's response is gentle, patient, maddeningly insufficient. Act we do, young Padawan, through guidance, through wisdom, direct intervention. The path to attachment is fix everything we cannot. Accept what we cannot change. We must. Dooku's face shows frustration, but he bows respectfully, accepts the teaching, tries to quiet the part of him that insists acceptance of injustice is just another form of complicity. Years pass. Dooku becomes a Jedi Knight, then a master himself. He takes his own Padawan, a wild, independent boy named Qui-Gon Jinn. In teaching Qui-Gon, Dooku discovers something dangerous. He is good at questioning authority, good at seeing the gaps between what the Jedi claim to be and what they actually do. Too good. The vision shifts to a council meeting. Dooku stands before the assembled masters, presenting evidence of corruption in the Senate. Senators taking bribes from the Trade Federation. Jedi missions being assigned based on political favors rather than actual need. The Republic rotting from within while its supposed guardians look the other way. The council listens, nods solemnly, thanks him for his diligence. And then they do nothing. Politics, not our domain is, Yoda explains after the meeting. The light we bring through our presence, through example, the Senate guide we cannot trust in the Force. We must. Dooku wants to scream. He wants to grab his ancient master by the shoulders and shake him until Yoda sees what he sees. That trust in the Force is not the same as trust in broken institutions. That being an example means nothing if no one is watching. That the light they claim to bring is invisible to the beings dying in the dark. But he does not scream. He is a Jedi. Jedi do not give in to emotion. So he buries it, meditates on it, lets it fester. The Keeper speaks again. Dooku's fall was not sudden. It was erosion. Year after year of watching the Order choose comfort over justice, of bringing evidence of suffering and being told to let go, of seeing his own Padawan punished for the same questioning spirit Dooku had once been praised for having. The next vision breaks your heart. Qui-Gon Jinn lies dead on Naboo, cut down by a Sith Lord while the Republic and the Jedi Council play politics. Dooku arrives too late to say goodbye. He stands over the body of the man he trained, the man he loved like a son. The man who died because the council was too busy debating trade disputes to notice the Sith had returned. Dooku's hands shake as he closes Qui-Gon's eyes. Something inside him breaks completely. The Keeper's voice is quiet now, sad. This was the moment, not when Dooku fell to the dark side, but when he realized the light side, at least as the Jedi practiced it, had failed him, failed Qui-Gon, failed the galaxy. You watch as Dooku requests an audience with Yoda one final time. The old master receives him in the meditation gardens. Yoda senses his former student's turmoil, offers wisdom accumulated over 800 years of life. Grieve you must, but release your grief into the Force. Attachment to those lost, suffering it brings. Remember Qui-Gon with love, but let him go. Dooku stares at his master, at this being who taught him everything he knows about the Force, and he finally speaks the truth that has been building in him for decades. Master, I brought you evidence of Republic corruption. You told me our place is not in politics. I showed you slavery thriving on Outer Rim worlds. You said we cannot save everyone. I reported the Senate using Jedi as political pawns. You counseled patience. My Padawan died fighting evil. We should have stopped years ago, and you tell me to let him go. Dooku's voice does not rise. That would be unseemly, but the pain in it cuts deeper than any scream. I brought you everything. Evidence, testimony, solutions. And you gave me meditation, philosophy, platitudes about the will of the Force. I loved you, Master. I still do. But you love the Order more than you have ever loved me or Qui-Gon or any of your students. And the Order is broken. Yoda's expression shows pain, real, genuine pain. But his response remains unchanged. Difficult these truths are. But the Jedi way, trust we must. Serve the Force we do. Not our own desires for justice. Clouded your judgment is meditate on this. You should. It is the wrong answer. The only answer Yoda knows how to give, but the wrong answer nonetheless. Dooku bows one last time, turns, walks away. He does not look back. The Keeper's narration continues as the vision follows Dooku through the months after his departure. He left the Order quietly. No dramatic confrontation, no public denunciation. He simply returned to Sereno and tried to create the justice the Jedi refused to provide. He used his family wealth to help the poor, to fight corruption in his sector, to be what he thought a true guardian of peace should be. But it was not enough, could never be enough. One man, even a man as powerful as Dooku, could not reform a galaxy. The Republic's rot ran too deep. The systems designed to maintain order were the same systems perpetuating injustice. And then Darth Sidious found him. The vision shows their first meeting. Sidious does not offer power, does not tempt with promises of unlimited ability. He offers something far more seductive, a chance to actually change things. The Jedi failed you, Sidious whispers. They taught you to see injustice and do nothing, to feel compassion and call it weakness. But I see your strength, your vision. Together, we could tear down the corrupt Republic, build something better, something just. Dooku knows Sidious is Sith, knows the dark side corrupts, knows everything the Jedi taught him about this path. But he also knows that the alternative is spending the rest of his life watching the galaxy burn while the Jedi meditate on their own helplessness. So he makes a choice. Not for power, not for personal gain, but because he genuinely believes this is the only way to save the Republic from itself. He becomes Darth Tyrannus. The vision shows Dooku's transformation. The elegant Jedi Master, becoming the architect of the Clone Wars, orchestrating the conflict that will tear the galaxy apart, believing until almost the very end that he is doing the right thing. That once the war exposes the Republic's weakness and the Jedi's hypocrisy, a new order will rise, something better, something that actually protects the innocent. He never sees the betrayal coming, never realizes that Sidious used his idealism the same way the Jedi Order used his obedience, as a tool, a means to an end, disposable. When Anakin Skywalker cuts off his hands aboard the Invisible Hand, Dooku looks to Sidious for help, for the justice they were supposed to create together. Instead, Sidious orders his execution. In his final moments, Dooku understands. He was not creating justice. He was being manipulated by a different master. Same chains, different holder. The vision fades. The Keeper stands beside you in the darkness. Yoda lived with this failure for the rest of his life. In exile on Dagobah, he meditated on where he went wrong, tried to understand how 800 years of wisdom failed to save one brilliant, compassionate Padawan who only wanted to help people. The Keeper gestures toward another holocron, beginning to glow. But Dooku's fall was not the end. It was the beginning, because Dooku trained Qui-Gon, and Qui-Gon's death would trigger a cascade of failures that would destroy everything the Jedi had built. The next vision forms, a younger Dooku, a teenage Padawan with wild eyes and a fierce spirit. Qui-Gon Jinn, whose unfinished training would doom the galaxy. Qui-Gon Jinn was everything the Jedi Order claimed to want but refused to tolerate. He believed in the living Force, the Force as it existed in the present moment, flowing through all living things, asking to be trusted rather than controlled. The Jedi Council preached about trusting the Force, but what they actually meant was trusting their interpretation of the Force, their rules, their traditions, their ancient certainty that they knew better than the universe itself. Qui-Gon never quite learned to pretend those were the same thing. The holocron shows a younger version of the man, still a Padawan under Count Dooku's instruction. The resemblance between master and student is striking, not physical, but philosophical. Both possessed a fundamental inability to ignore injustice. Both questioned authority when authority proved unworthy of respect. Both believed the Jedi could be better than what they were. But where Dooku's questioning eventually curdled into bitterness, Qui-Gon's remained idealistic. Hopeful, he truly believed he could change the Order from within. that his example would show other Jedi. There was another way to serve the light. He was wrong, but his wrongness was the kind that comes from having too much faith in people rather than too little. When Qui-Gon took Obi-Wan Kenobi as his Padawan, the council was skeptical. Obi-Wan was aggressive, too eager to prove himself, too emotional in his attachments to his fellow initiates. Several council members openly questioned whether he should be trained at all. Qui-Gon saw something different. He saw a boy with enormous potential being judged for having feelings instead of being taught how to healthily process those feelings. He took Obi-Wan despite the council's concerns, determined to train him his own way. And it worked, mostly. The vision shows their training together. Qui-Gon teaching not through rigid adherence to the code, but through experience, through questions, through forcing Obi-Wan to think rather than simply obey. They argue constantly. Obi-Wan wants structure and clear guidance. Qui-Gon gives him philosophical riddles and missions where the right answer is never obvious. Why do we follow the council's wisdom? Obi-Wan asks during one heated exchange after Qui-Gon has again ignored direct orders from the temple. We follow wisdom wherever we find it, Qui-Gon replies. Sometimes that is the council, sometimes it is not. The Force does not speak exclusively through bureaucracy, Padawan. Obi-Wan's frustration is visible. He respects his master deeply, loves him even, though neither of them use that word. But there is a part of Obi-Wan that desperately wants his master to just be normal, to follow the rules, to make things easier for both of them. Instead, Qui-Gon keeps dragging him into complicated situations where the code provides no clear answers. The Keeper speaks softly as the vision progresses. Qui-Gon was teaching Obi-Wan to think independently, to trust his instincts, to question systems that claimed infallibility. These were valuable lessons, but they were incomplete lessons because Qui-Gon never finished teaching him. The scene shifts to Naboo. You have seen holo recordings of this moment in history archives, the Battle of Naboo. The Sith revealing themselves after 1,000 years of hiding, Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi facing Darth Maul in the Fade Power Generator. But the vision shows you something recordings cannot capture, the feelings beneath the action. Qui-Gon's determination, Obi-Wan's fear, the moment when the laser walls separate them and Obi-Wan can only watch as his master fights alone. Qui-Gon is skilled, perhaps the finest duelist of his generation, but Maul is younger, faster, fueled by hatred that burns hotter than any meditation Qui-Gon can summon. The Sith's lightsaber finds its mark, drives through Qui-Gon's chest. The Jedi Master falls. Obi-Wan's scream tears through the Force itself, raw, agonized. Everything a Jedi is trained never to feel. He watches his master collapse, watches the life begin to drain from Qui-Gon's eyes, and something inside Obi-Wan shatters. When the laser walls finally deactivate, Obi-Wan does not fight with the serenity of a Jedi. He fights with rage, pure, undiluted fury. He channels his grief and anger into every strike, catches Maul off guard with the sheer ferocity of his assault. The Sith actually manages to disarm him, to knock Obi-Wan into the melting pit. But that rage, that attachment the Jedi forbid, that love for his dying master, gives Obi-Wan the strength to leap from certain death, to summon Qui-Gon's lightsaber to his hand, to cut Darth Maul in half. He wins the duel, but he loses everything that matters. But Obi-Wan crawls to his master's side. Qui-Gon is still alive, barely blood soaking through his robes. Each breath a visible struggle. There is so much Obi-Wan wants to say, so much he needs his master to explain. They were supposed to have years left, decades. There was still so much to learn. Qui-Gon's hand grabs Obi-Wan's tunic, pulls him close. The dying Jedi's words are urgent, desperate. Promise me you will train the boy. Obi-Wan does not understand. His mind is chaos. His master is dying in his arms, and Qui-Gon is talking about Anakin Skywalker, the child they found on Tatooine, the boy the Council explicitly forbade Qui-Gon from training. Yes, Master, Obi-Wan hears himself say, because what else can he say to his dying master? No? Qui-Gon's grip loosens. His eyes lose focus. The living force he loved so much leaves his body and becomes simply the force, universal, eternal, gone. Obi-Wan is 25 years old. He has been a Jedi Knight for less than a day. His master's body is still warm in his arms, and he has just promised to take responsibility for training the most powerful Force-sensitive child discovered in living memory. The Keeper's voice breaks through the vision. This was the cruelest failure, not malicious, not intentional, but devastating nonetheless. Qui-Gon died too soon, left his student incomplete, gave Obi-Wan a burden no 25-year-old should carry, and trusted that somehow, despite having only half learned the lessons Qui-Gon was trying to teach, Obi-Wan would be able to pass them on to someone else. The vision shifts to Qui-Gon's funeral. Obi-Wan stands alone while the pyre burns. Council members offer condolences, empty words about the will of the Force, about Qui-Gon becoming one with the cosmic energy, about the honor of his sacrifice. None of them offer to help Obi-Wan grieve, to process his trauma, to heal before taking on the massive responsibility of training the Chosen One. They need him functional, operational, so they promote him to Jedi Knight and hand him Anakin Skywalker and expect everything to work out fine. Because that is what the Jedi do. They demand their members simply be better, stronger, more controlled. Grief is temporary. Duty is eternal. Meditate through the pain and move forward. So Obi-Wan does exactly that. He buries his grief so deep that he almost convinces himself it is not there, takes Anakin as his Padawan, promises himself he will be the perfect master. He will do everything right. He will not let Qui-Gon down. The vision shows Obi-Wan alone in his quarters, months later, unable to sleep, clutching Qui-Gon's lightsaber, tears finally coming now that no one is watching, whispering to the empty room, "I do not know how to do this. I do not know what I am doing. You were supposed to teach me. You were supposed to be here. But Qui-Gon is not here, will never be here again." And Obi-Wan has no choice but to figure it out alone. The Keeper's final words for this vision carry the weight of prophecy. Obi-Wan loved Qui-Gon, tried desperately to honor his memory. But love is not the same as preparedness. Grief is not the same as wisdom. And trying to be the perfect master meant Obi-Wan would make himself into exactly what Qui-Gon had spent years teaching him not to be. The holocron shows one last image, a young Anakin Skywalker arriving at the Jedi Temple, looking up at Obi-Wan with complete trust, believing this man will teach him everything he needs to know. And Obi-Wan looking down at Anakin with determination and terror warring in his eyes, knowing he is not ready, knowing he has no choice, knowing that somehow he must take everything Qui-Gon tried to teach him and compress it into lessons for a boy who is already too old to train by Jedi standards. A boy who has known slavery and loss and attachment. A boy who needs a master with Qui-Gon's wisdom and experience, but getting instead a traumatized 25-year-old still drowning in unprocessed grief. This, the Keeper says quietly, is where the galaxy's fate was truly sealed. Not in the Clone Wars, not in the Emperor's manipulation, but here, in this moment, when an incomplete master took an impossible student and tried to do his best. The vision fades. Darkness returns to the chamber. You can feel the next failure approaching, the one everything has been building toward. The failure that would burn the galaxy to ash. Anakin Skywalker was 9 years old when Obi-Wan Kenobi became his master. Old enough to remember his mother's face. Old enough to understand what slavery felt like. Old enough to know love and loss and fear in ways most Jedi never would. Too old, the Council said. Too much attachment already formed. Too dangerous to train. They were right, but they trained him anyway. The holocron shows those early years. Obi-Wan, trying desperately to be what Qui-Gon was to him, patient, wise, understanding. But Obi-Wan is none of those things yet. He is 25 years old and drowning in expectations he cannot meet. Every time he looks at Anakin, he sees Qui-Gon's final request. Every time Anakin struggles, Obi-Wan feels the weight of failure pressing down on him. So he does what the Jedi taught him to do. He follows the code, rigidly, perfectly, every lesson by the book, every rule enforced without exception. If he can just train Anakin correctly, if he can follow the prescribed methods exactly, then maybe he can prevent the disaster everyone seems to expect. But Anakin is not like other Padawans. He has nightmares, vivid, terrible dreams about his mother suffering alone on Tatooine while he lives in comfort on Coruscant. He wakes screaming sometimes, reaches for Obi-Wan in the dark, needing comfort, needing to be told that his mother is safe. Obi-Wan's response comes straight from his own training. Anakin, you must control your emotions. Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose. Your mother made her choice to let you come here. Honor that choice by becoming the best Jedi you can be. The words are meant to help. Obi-Wan genuinely believes he is teaching Anakin wisdom. This is what Jedi do. They release their attachments. They trust in the Force. They find peace through acceptance. But what Anakin hears is different. What Anakin hears is that his fear for his mother is wrong. That loving her is a weakness he must overcome. That to be a good Jedi, he must stop being the boy who cares so deeply. It hurts. So Anakin learns to hide, to present the face of a perfect Padawan while burying his actual feelings deeper and deeper. He stops telling Obi-Wan about the nightmares, stops asking questions that might reveal the churning mess of emotion inside him, becomes whoever he thinks Obi-Wan wants him to be. And Obi-Wan, still so young himself, mistakes performance for progress. The vision shifts forward, years passing, Anakin growing from a child into a teenager. His power in the Force is extraordinary, unprecedented. He can do things Obi-Wan never dreamed possible, lift objects that should be impossible to move, sense disturbances across vast distances. His reflexes in combat are so fast they seem prescient. The Council watches him constantly. Yoda, Mace Windu, all of them aware that this boy is different, is special, possibly the chosen one prophesied to bring balance to the Force. That prophecy makes them nervous. Balance could mean many things, not all of them good. Their surveillance creates paranoia in Anakin. He knows they are watching, judging, waiting for him to fail. The pressure builds. And Obi-Wan, caught between supporting his Padawan and obeying the Council, tries to walk an impossible line. Master, why does the Council distrust me? Anakin asks one night after a particularly tense council session. Obi-Wan considers lying, decides honesty is better. They do not distrust you, Anakin. They are simply cautious. Your power is remarkable. They want to ensure you remain on the right path. By watching my every move, by questioning my every decision, by caring about your future. Obi-Wan's voice is firm. The Council sees your potential, so do I. But potential can lead to greatness or to catastrophe. They want greatness for you. What Obi-Wan does not say is that he shares their concern, that he watches Anakin too, that he sees his Padawans struggle with emotion and fears what it might become. That sometimes, late at night, he wonders if Qui-Gon made a terrible mistake asking him to train this boy. The vision shows their relationship as the years progress. There is love there, real, deep affection. They become brothers in all but blood, fight side by side, save each other's lives repeatedly, develop the kind of bond that only comes from shared danger and mutual trust. But beneath that bond, a disconnect grows. Anakin needs someone who will understand his fear. Obi-Wan offers techniques to suppress it. Anakin needs permission to grieve. Obi-Wan teaches detachment. Anakin needs to know that his feelings are valid even when they are messy and complicated. Obi-Wan, following the only teaching method he knows, tells him that feelings are obstacles to overcome. And the worst part is that neither of them realizes what is happening. Both genuinely love each other. Both want the best for each other. But they are speaking different languages while believing they are having the same conversation. The Keeper's voice provides context. This is perhaps the most painful type of failure. The failure born not from cruelty or neglect, but from sincere effort hampered by inadequate tools. Obi-Wan was doing his absolute best, following his training, being the master the Jedi Order taught him to be, and in doing so, creating exactly the conditions that would eventually destroy his Padawan. The vision shows the pivotal moment that changes everything. Anakin is 19. He has another nightmare about his mother. This one is different, more intense, more real. He wakes knowing with absolute certainty that she is in danger, that she is dying. He goes to Obi-Wan, desperate. "Master, I have to go to Tatooine. My mother is in danger. I can feel it." Obi-Wan sees the panic in his Padawan's eyes, feels the turbulence in Anakin's Force presence, and he makes a choice. The choice the Jedi Code demands. Anakin, these visions can be unreliable. The Force shows us possibilities, not certainties. To abandon our mission based on a dream would be irresponsible. You must trust in the will of the Force. But Master, what if she dies while we wait? Then she becomes one with the Force. Death is a natural part of life. You must not let your fear of loss cloud your judgment. Anakin goes anyway, against orders. Against every lesson Obi-Wan has tried to instill. He flies to Tatooine and finds his mother captured by Tusken raiders, tortured, dying in his arms. And in his grief and rage, he slaughters every Tusken in the camp, men, women, children, an entire tribe wiped out in minutes of Force-enhanced fury. When he returns, he confesses to Padme Amidala, but not to Obi-Wan. Cannot face his master with the truth of what he has done. Cannot admit that he failed to control his emotions, that he gave in to rage and committed atrocity. So he buries it, adds it to the growing mountain of secrets between them. Obi-Wan senses something changed in Anakin on Tatooine, something dark. But when he asks, Anakin deflects, says his mother died, but he arrived too late to save her. The lie is mostly truth. Obi-Wan accepts it because he wants to believe his Padawan is still on the right path. The vision accelerates. The Clone Wars begin. Both Obi-Wan and Anakin are made generals overnight, given command of clone armies, expected to lead military campaigns across the galaxy. The Jedi transform from peacekeepers into warriors, from diplomats into tacticians. And in war, Anakin flourishes. He is a brilliant commander, fearless, innovative, willing to take risks that more cautious Jedi would never consider. He wins battles through instinct and emotion, using the very passion Obi-Wan has spent years telling him to suppress. His clone troopers adore him. follow him into impossible situations because they trust he will bring them home. Obi-Wan watches his former Padawan become a legend. Should feel pride, does feel pride, but also confusion. How is Anakin succeeding by breaking every rule Obi-Wan tried to teach him? Their missions separate them for months at a time. They communicate through holograms and brief meetings between campaigns. The Brotherhood is still there, but the distance grows. Not physical distance, emotional distance. The space between who they really are and who they pretend to be with each other. Anakin secretly marries Padme Amidala. Obi-Wan knows but says nothing. To acknowledge it would force him to either report Anakin or become complicit in violating the code. Silence is easier. Silence lets him avoid choosing between his duty to the Order and his love for his brother. So he pretends not to know, and Anakin pretends he is not lying, and the truth sits between them like a bomb, waiting for someone to acknowledge its existence. The Keeper speaks again. Obi-Wan could see Anakin struggling, could sense the darkness growing, but the Jedi way offered no tools for intervention, no method for helping a Padawan process trauma or fear or grief. Only meditation, only the code, only trust that if Anakin followed the teachings, everything would resolve itself. The vision shows them in parallel meditation. Same temple, same room even, but entirely separate worlds. Obi-Wan's meditation is peaceful, controlled, his mind touching the Force with the discipline of decades of practice. He has learned to quiet his doubts, to trust the Order's wisdom, to believe that duty and love can coexist if you simply have enough faith. Anakin's meditation is chaos. His mind races with fears he cannot voice. His mother's death, his secret marriage, his growing power, and the burden of being the chosen one. The Council's distrust, Palpatine's friendship and understanding, the weight of trying to be perfect when perfection requires denying half of what he is. They sit 3 meters apart. They might as well be on different planets. The Keeper's final words for this vision carry devastating weight. The failure here was not lack of love. Obi-Wan loved Anakin more than he loved anyone except perhaps Qui-Gon. But the Jedi never taught him that love requires more than affection. It requires seeing someone truly, understanding them, creating space for them to be imperfect and still accepted. Obi-Wan only knew how to love through the filter of the code, and that filtered love, however genuine, was not enough to save Anakin from drowning. The holocron shifts. A new figure appears, young, eager, female. Montrals marking her as Togruta. Ahsoka Tano, Anakin's Padawan, the person who would finally show Anakin what it felt like to have a master fail you so completely that the ground beneath your feet disappeared entirely. The Council assigned Ahsoka Tano to Anakin Skywalker as a test. Master Yoda himself made the decision. The reasoning was sound by Jedi standards. Anakin struggled with attachment, struggled with discipline, struggled with following orders. Perhaps teaching would complete his training. Perhaps responsibility for another life would mature him. Perhaps through guiding a Padawan, he would finally understand the lessons Obi-Wan had been trying to teach him. Anakin hated the idea immediately. The vision shows their first meeting on Christophsis. A 14-year-old girl with confidence bordering on arrogance, calling him Sky Guy, treating his reluctance as a challenge rather than a warning. She had no idea what she was walking into. No idea that her master was a man holding himself together through sheer willpower while cracks spread through his foundation. But something unexpected happened. They clicked. Ahsoka was not like Anakin expected. She questioned him constantly, challenged his decisions, refused to simply obey without understanding why. All the things that would have infuriated a traditional Jedi Master made Anakin smile, because she reminded him of himself. that fierce independence, that refusal to accept wisdom just because it came from authority. So Anakin taught her the way he wished Obi-Wan had taught him. He encouraged her questions, praised her instincts, told her that feelings were not weaknesses to suppress but tools to understand and channel. He gave her the permission to be human that no one had ever given him. And Ahsoka flourished under that teaching. She became skilled, brave, fiercely loyal, a warrior and a protector, everything the Jedi claimed to value. But Anakin was also teaching her all of his own flaws, the impulsiveness, the attachment, the willingness to break rules when the rules did not serve the greater good. He was creating a Jedi who believed in the light while standing outside the Order's structure. A maverick just like Qui-Gon, just like Dooku before his fall. The Keeper narrates as the vision shows their adventures across the Clone Wars. Watch how the bond between them deepens. This is not the formal master-Padawan relationship the Order prescribes. This is family. Anakin has found someone who sees him for who he is and accepts him anyway. Ahsoka has found a master who treats her like a person rather than a student to be molded. For both of them, this relationship is healing something the Jedi Order broke. You watch Anakin nearly die protecting her. Watch Ahsoka disobey orders to save his life. Watch them become Sky Guy and Snips, brother and sister in everything but blood. The attachment the Jedi forbid, creating something beautiful, too beautiful to last. The vision shifts to Barriss Offee, another Padawan, brilliant, dedicated, trained by Master Luminara Unduli. While Anakin and Ahsoka form their chaotic bond, Barriss and Luminara maintain the proper Jedi distance. Luminara is everything Obi-Wan tried to be: calm, detached, perfectly controlled. She teaches through example and expects Barriss to learn through observation and meditation. Barriss tries. She genuinely tries. But the Clone Wars are tearing the galaxy apart. She watches Jedi lead clone armies into slaughter, watches the Republic commit atrocities in the name of peace, watches her own Order compromise every principle they claim to hold sacred. And when she brings her concerns to Luminara, her master responds with Jedi serenity. We cannot control the Senate's decisions. We can only do our duty and trust in the Force. Accept what cannot be changed. Padawan. The same words Yoda said to Dooku. The same philosophy that pushed the idealistic Count into Sidious's arms. History echoing forward again. But Barriss does not leave the Order. She decides to expose it from within, to show the galaxy what the Jedi have become. Her solution is extreme, terrorist extreme. She bombs the Jedi Temple, kills clone troopers and Jedi alike, all to make a statement that no one can ignore. And then she frames Ahsoka for the crime. The Keeper's voice grows heavy. This is where systemic failure becomes personal catastrophe. Barriss Offee was not born evil. She was a student destroyed by a master who taught her to suppress rather than process, who showed her detachment but never compassion for herself, who made her feel alone in her moral crisis. And when Barriss broke, she took Ahsoka with her. The vision shows Ahsoka's arrest. The evidence against her is overwhelming, circumstantial but damning. She was at the temple during the bombing, was seen near the suspect, cannot explain certain gaps in her timeline. The military tribunal that forms does not care about her protests of innocence. They care about closing the case quickly, about showing the galaxy that the Jedi handle their own problems. And the Council believes the evidence. Not all of them. Some have doubts, but the majority conclude that Ahsoka must have done it. Perhaps she was struggling with the darkness. Perhaps the war corrupted her. Perhaps they failed to notice warning signs. Regardless, she must be expelled from the Order and turned over to the Republic military for prosecution. Expelled, not temporarily suspended. not given the benefit of the doubt while investigation continues. Expelled, cast out, her Padawan braid cut, her future as a Jedi ended, all before anyone bothers to actually prove her guilt. Anakin is furious. He rages at the Council, demands they give Ahsoka time, that they believe in her the way they are supposed to believe in all their members. Obi-Wan tries to calm him, explains that the evidence must be followed wherever it leads, that faith is not the same as blindness to facts. But there is one person who does not care about evidence or procedure or council consensus: Anakin. He investigates alone, follows threads the Republic military missed because they were too eager to close the case, risks everything to prove Ahsoka's innocence, and he succeeds. He finds Barriss, forces her confession, drags her before the Council and the assembled court, proves beyond doubt that Ahsoka was innocent, that the Jedi Order threw away one of their own based on convenience rather than truth. The Council apologizes. Master Windu himself speaks the words, "Ahsoka Tano, we hereby apologize for the mistakes we made, for casting you out. This was actually your great trial. The Force works in mysterious ways. Now you may rejoin the Order as a Jedi Knight. This is the will of the Force." The vision shows Ahsoka's face as she hears this. The apology that is not really an apology. The explanation that frames her nightmare as some kind of cosmic test she should be grateful for. The assumption that she would just come back. That betrayal can be forgiven with a speech about the will of the Force. She looks at Anakin, her master, her brother, the one person who fought for her when everyone else abandoned her, and she sees his desperation, his need for her to say yes, to prove that the Order can be redeemed, that loyalty means something. Then she looks at the Council, at Yoda, who assigned her to Anakin, knowing he was unstable, at Windu, who expelled her without proper investigation, at Obi-Wan, who stood by and let it happen because the rules required it. "I'm sorry, Master," her voice breaks, "but I'm not coming back." Anakin's face shatters. "Ahsoka, you are making a mistake." "Maybe, but I have to sort this out on my own. Without the Council, without the Order, I believe in you, Anakin. I believe in what you taught me, but I cannot be a part of this institution anymore." She walks away, down the temple steps, into the Coruscant crowds, never looking back, leaving Anakin standing there with the Council behind him and the future crumbling ahead of him. The Keeper speaks softly. This is the moment, not when Anakin turns to the dark side, but when his faith in the Jedi Order dies completely. He followed their rules, trusted their wisdom, believed that if he just proved Ahsoka's innocence, justice would prevail, and it did. She was vindicated. But the Order felt no shame for their mistake, felt no responsibility for the pain they caused. They apologized like politicians and expected that to be enough. The vision shows Anakin alone in his quarters that night, not meditating, not processing, just sitting in the dark with his head in his hands, everything he has buried for years rising to the surface. His mother dying while he followed orders, the Council treating him like a threat since childhood, Obi-Wan teaching him to suppress rather than understand, and now Ahsoka walking away because the Order that raised her chose protocol over people. Palpatine visits him. The vision shows the Chancellor's careful manipulation, not offering power, not tempting with darkness, just listening, understanding, validating every doubt Anakin has been told to ignore. They do not appreciate you, Anakin. They use you but never trust you. You risk everything for them, and they give you nothing but suspicion in return. You deserve better. For the first time, Anakin does not argue, does not defend the Order, just nods slowly, some broken place inside him, agreeing. The vision expands, shows other failures across the Clone Wars, Master Pong Krail revealing himself as a traitor, his Padawan left to process that their teacher was a monster all along. Even Pyle dying, leaving his student orphaned mid-war. Younglings rushed through training to fill casualty ranks, given lightsabers at 13 and told to lead clones into battle. The Jedi becoming exactly what Barriss Offee accused them of being. Warmongers, hypocrites, an order that lost its way, but refused to admit it. The Keeper's final words land like a funeral bell. The war corrupted everything, but the corruption was only possible because the foundation was already cracked. The Jedi went to war as generals because they had been acting like soldiers for centuries, just soldiers fighting with meditation and philosophy instead of blasters, and when actual war came, they simply made explicit what had always been implicit. They valued victory over wisdom, results over understanding, winning over healing. The holocron pulses, darkness gathering. You feel the weight of what comes next. Order 66, the betrayal, the fall. The moment when every failure across millennia converges into galactic catastrophe. The Keeper's voice drops to a whisper. Are you ready to see how it all ends? The vision forms, Anakin kneeling before Palpatine, accepting a new name, Darth Vader. The final days of the Republic begin with a nightmare. Anakin Skywalker wakes screaming, Padme dying in childbirth. Her face twisted in agony, calling his name, him unable to save her, unable to do anything but watch as she slips away. The nightmare is worse because it feels real, not symbolic, not abstract, real in the way his dreams of his mother felt real, and he knows with terrible certainty that if he does nothing, this vision will come true. He goes to Yoda, desperate for guidance, hoping the ancient master might have wisdom that Obi-Wan lacks, but he cannot tell Yoda the full truth, cannot admit he is married, that Padme is pregnant, that his entire life is built on violations of the code. So he speaks in hypotheticals. Someone he cares about might die. How does a Jedi handle that fear? Yoda's response is familiar, ancient, useless. Death is a natural part of life. Rejoice for those around you who transform into the Force. Mourn them. Do not. Miss them. Do not. Attachment leads to jealousy, the shadow of greed that is. Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose. The vision shows Anakin's face, trying to accept this teaching, trying to let go. But all he can think is that his mother died while he tried to let go. That letting go means accepting Padme's death as inevitable, natural, something to rejoice about. He cannot do it, will not do it. There has to be another way. And Palpatine offers him one. The Keeper's voice narrates the manipulation. Darth Sidious spent years preparing Anakin for this moment, building trust, offering understanding when the Jedi offered only doctrine. Palpatine never told Anakin to suppress his feelings. He validated them, made Anakin feel seen. And when the moment came, when Anakin was most desperate, Palpatine revealed the one thing he knew Anakin could not resist, a way to save Padme. The vision shows their conversation, Palpatine revealing himself as Sith, but not as Anakin's enemy, as his potential savior. The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural, including the power to prevent death. Anakin should report him immediately, should call the council, should do his duty as a Jedi. Instead, he hesitates, because duty has never saved anyone he loved. Duty let his mother die. Duty expelled Ahsoka. Duty turned Obi-Wan into someone who prioritizes rules over people. So Anakin makes a choice. He tells Mace Windu about Palpatine, fulfills his obligation. Then he follows Windu to the Chancellor's office, because some part of him needs to see what happens next. What happens next destroys everything. Windu defeats Palpatine, disarms him, has him helpless and begging for mercy. And then Windu raises his lightsaber to execute the Chancellor. No trial, no due process, just immediate execution of a defenseless prisoner. The vision captures Anakin's horror. This is Master Windu, one of the most respected Jedi in the Order, champion of the Code, and he is about to murder someone who has surrendered, violating every principle the Jedi claim to embody. It is not the Jedi way, Anakin says. He must stand trial. He is too dangerous to be left alive, Windu responds. No hesitation, no doubt, just certainty that ends justify means. And Anakin understands in that moment that the Jedi are exactly what Barriss said they were. Exactly what Dooku tried to warn everyone about. Hypocrites who preach mercy but practice expedience, who claim to serve justice but really serve their own power. Palpatine unleashes Force lightning. Windu deflects it. The energy reflects back, scarring Palpatine's face. He becomes weaker, more pathetic, begging for his life, while Windu prepares the killing blow. Anakin makes his choice, not for the dark side, not for power, but to save someone from being executed without trial. He cuts off Windu's hand, watches the Jedi Master fall from the window, realizes immediately what he has done. What have I done? The words tear from him. Horror, regret, understanding that he has crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. He falls to his knees, and Palpatine, no longer weak, no longer pathetic, places a hand on his shoulder. You are fulfilling your destiny, Anakin. The Jedi betrayed you, used you. But I can teach you to save Padme. Pledge yourself to my teachings. Become my apprentice. Learn to use the dark side of the Force. Anakin looks up at this man who has been his friend, his confidant, the one person who never demanded he be anything other than what he was. And he makes the final choice, not because he wants power, but because he wants to save his wife, because every other option has been stripped away, because the Jedi way let everyone he loved suffer. I will do whatever you ask. Just help me save Padme's life. I cannot live without her. To cheat death is a power only one has achieved. But if we work together, I know we can discover the secret. Palpatine gives him a new name, Darth Vader, and a new purpose. The Jedi have betrayed the Republic, attempted a coup. They must be eliminated, all of them, for peace, for justice, for the galaxy. The vision shows what happens next. You have heard of Order 66 in history texts, read casualty reports, seen the before and after of the Jedi population. But the vision makes you witness it, feel it, understand the magnitude of betrayal. Across the galaxy, clone troopers receive the command simultaneously. Execute Order 66. The Jedi are traitors. Kill them all. And they do. These clones, who fought beside Jedi for 3 years, who trusted them, who called them friends, they turn their blasters on their generals without hesitation, without remorse, because inhibitor chips in their brains override choice, override loyalty, override humanity. Padawans are shot in the back by soldiers they trained with. Masters die protecting students they cannot save. Younglings call for help that will never come. The Force itself screams with the agony of thousands of lights being extinguished simultaneously. And Vader leads clone troopers into the Jedi Temple. The Keeper's voice breaks. This is the moment when every failure across millennia converges. Vader walks through halls where he trained, past chambers where Obi-Wan taught him, into the room where younglings shelter, hoping someone will save them. The younglings recognize him, Master Skywalker, hero of the Clone Wars, the kind Jedi who always had time to show them new Force techniques. They run to him, relieved, certain they are safe now. One small boy looks up at him. "Master Skywalker, there are too many of them. What are we going to do?" Vader ignites his lightsaber. The blue blade illuminates their trusting faces, and he begins killing children. The vision does not spare you details, does not allow you to look away. You watch the Chosen One, prophesied to bring balance to the Force, murder the Order's future. Watch him become the thing he always feared. Watch him destroy everything he claimed to love. This is not the dark side's corruption. This is the Jedi Order's failure made manifest. Every suppressed emotion, every unprocessed trauma, every time Anakin was told his feelings were wrong rather than taught how to understand them, every moment Obi-Wan chose the code over connection, every decision the Council made that prioritized doctrine over people, all of it culminating in this: the Chosen One as child killer. Obi-Wan and Yoda survive, return to the temple to find recordings of what happened. They watch Anakin kneel before Palpatine, accept the name Vader. They watch him lead the attack, watch him murder younglings who trusted him. Obi-Wan's face crumbles. "I have failed you, Anakin. I have failed you, Anakin. I have failed you, Anakin." Yoda beside him, also broken. "Destroy the Sith. We must send me to kill the Emperor. To face this boy, I cannot. I will do it. I will do what I must." Obi-Wan's voice is hollow, dead. He is volunteering to kill the closest thing he has ever had to a brother, because duty demands it, because the code requires it, because despite everything he is still a Jedi who follows orders. The vision shifts to Mustafar, volcanic planet where Vader has taken the separatist leadership, where he is completing his fall by murdering the very people he once protected. Obi-Wan arrives on Padme's ship, confronts his former Padawan. Anakin Chancellor Palpatine is evil. From my point of view, the Jedi are evil. Vader's response is not madness. It is the logical conclusion of everything he has experienced. The Jedi expelled Ahsoka, tried to execute Palpatine without trial, taught him to suppress rather than process, failed him at every turn. Then you are lost. They fight, master against student, brother against brother. Every move they make echoes training sessions from years past. Obi-Wan knows Anakin's style perfectly. Anakin knows Obi-Wan's. They are too evenly matched, too familiar with each other. Until they are not. "It is over, Anakin. I have the high ground. You underestimate my power. Do not try it." Anakin jumps. Obi-Wan cuts him down, severs both legs and an arm in one precise strike. Vader's body tumbles onto the volcanic bank, catches fire, begins to burn. And Obi-Wan watches, does not kill him, does not kill him, does not save him. Just watches his Padawan burn alive while Vader screams in agony. "You were my brother, Anakin. I loved you." The words are true. Obi-Wan does love him, has always loved him. But that love existed within the prison of Jedi teaching. Love filtered through detachment, through duty, through the belief that following the code was identical to doing right. Obi-Wan walks away, leaves Anakin to die, cannot finish him, cannot save him, can only escape before he has to witness the consequences of his own failure completely. But Anakin does not die. Palpatine rescues him, encases what remains in black armor, gives him a mask to breathe through, tells him that in his anger he killed Padme, that everything he did to save her instead destroyed her. The vision shows Vader's face behind the mask, not evil, not corrupted, just broken, a man who lost everything, trying to save the one thing that mattered, who became a monster. because the alternative was accepting that the people he trusted most had no answers for his pain. No. His scream tears through the Force, destroys medical equipment through sheer anguish. This is not the roar of a villain. This is the cry of a man realizing he traded his soul for nothing, that Padme died anyway, that he murdered children for a lie. The Keeper's voice returns, quiet, devastated. The Jedi Order is gone. 10,000 Jedi dead in a single night. The survivors scattered, hiding, broken, and the Chosen One, who was supposed to save them all, is now the weapon hunting them down. This is the cost of 25,000 years of flawed teaching, of masters who loved their students but never truly saw them, of an order that valued perfection over humanity. The vision shows Obi-Wan fleeing to Tatooine with infant Luke, Yoda escaping to Dagobah, both going into exile, both living with the knowledge that they failed not just Anakin, but everyone, the entire galaxy burning because they could not see past their own doctrine. Obi-Wan watches twin suns set over the desert, holds the child who will someday have to face what his father became, and he weeps. Finally, alone where no one can see, finally allowing himself to feel the enormity of what was lost. But even in grief, even in exile, Obi-Wan does not question the teachings, does not wonder if the Jedi way itself was flawed. He assumes the failure was personal, his personal inadequacy as a master, Anakin's personal weakness as a student. Never the system, never the code, never the order that created the conditions for this catastrophe. The Keeper's final words for this vision carry prophetic weight. They will try again, in hiding, in exile. They will preserve the old teachings, train new students, and they will repeat the same mistakes because they learned nothing. Because admitting the Jedi Order itself was broken would require them to admit their entire lives were built on flawed foundations. Easier to blame individuals, easier to trust that next time will be different. The holocron shifts again. Time accelerates, decades passing. The Empire rising and falling, new hope emerging from the ashes. Luke Skywalker, Obi-Wan's final student, the last chance to get it right. Or the next chapter in an endless cycle of failure. Luke Skywalker grew up believing his father was a navigator on a spice freighter, a good man who died in some nameless accident. Uncle Owen made sure the boy never asked too many questions, never wondered why he felt drawn to the stars, never questioned the power humming beneath his skin. But the Force does not forget bloodlines. And when Obi-Wan Kenobi finally emerged from decades of exile, he brought with him all the old teachings, all the old mistakes, all the wisdom that had already failed twice before. The holocron shows their first real meeting, not the brief encounter in the desert, but later. After Alderaan's destruction, after Obi-Wan becomes Luke's guide into a larger world, the old Jedi watches this farm boy with his father's eyes and his father's reckless courage, and he makes a choice that will haunt him even beyond death. He lies. Your father was a Jedi Knight, a cunning warrior, and a good friend. He was betrayed and murdered by Darth Vader. Not technically false. Anakin Skywalker did die in a sense when he became Vader, but it is a lie of omission. A careful construction designed to give Luke a heroic father without the burden of truth. Obi-Wan tells himself this is mercy, protection, that Luke is not ready for the full story. But really, it is cowardice, because telling Luke the truth would require Obi-Wan to admit his own failure, to say aloud that he trained Anakin Skywalker and watched him become the galaxy's greatest monster. Easier to separate them. Create a martyred Jedi father and a separate Sith villain, two different people rather than one tragedy. Luke accepts the story. Why would he not? This kind old hermit is offering him legacy, purpose, connection to parents he never knew, and perhaps most seductively, training in the mysterious force that has always called to him. But Yoda refuses initially. The ancient master has spent 19 years on Dagobah, meditating on his failures, watching the force, trying to understand where everything went wrong. And when Obi-Wan's ghost brings Luke to his swamp exile, Yoda sees too much of Anakin in this boy. I cannot teach him. The boy has no patience. He is too old, too much like his father. He is our last hope, Obi-Wan insists. No, there is another. But eventually, Yoda relents, perhaps because Obi-Wan persuades him. Perhaps because the alternative is letting the Sith rule forever. Perhaps because even 900 years of failure has not taught him that doing the same thing differently will produce different results. The vision shows Luke's training on Dagobah, and it is identical to every Jedi training that came before. Yoda teaches through cryptic wisdom, through tests Luke does not understand until after he passes or fails them, through demanding Luke suppress his natural instincts and trust in mystical concepts rather than his own judgment. You must unlearn what you have learned, Yoda instructs, as if Luke's 19 years of life experience are obstacles rather than foundations. As if becoming a Jedi requires erasing who he was and replacing it with who the Order thinks he should be. Luke tries. He genuinely wants to learn, lifts rocks through the Force, stands on one hand while Yoda perches on his foot, meditates in the swamp mist, does everything asked of him, but his friends are suffering. Han and Leia captured on Cloud City. He can feel their pain across the galaxy. And Yoda tells him to let go, to trust the Force, to accept that he cannot save everyone. The same lesson Yoda taught Dooku, the same philosophy that drove Dooku to the dark side. History echoing forward again, and Yoda cannot hear it. If you leave now, help them you could, but you would destroy all for which they have fought and suffered. The Keeper's voice narrates Luke's internal struggle. Luke faces an impossible choice: abandon people he loves to complete training in mystical philosophy, or trust his instincts and risk whatever consequences Yoda predicts. This should not be a difficult choice. The Jedi claim to be guardians, protectors. Their entire purpose is supposedly to help those in danger. But Yoda is asking Luke to prioritize his own development over his friends' lives. Luke makes his choice. The same choice Anakin made. He leaves, flies to Cloud City, abandons training to save the people he loves, because that is what heroes do, what anyone with basic human decency would do. Yoda and Obi-Wan watch him go with resignation. That boy is our last hope, Obi-Wan says again. No, there is another. Already they are thinking about the replacement, the backup, because Luke has shown himself to be too human, too attached, too unwilling to sacrifice personal connections for greater philosophical goals, just like his father. What happens on Cloud City confirms their fears. Luke finds Vader, duels him, loses badly. Vader is stronger, more experienced, fighting with the power of 20 years of dark side mastery. Luke barely survives, loses his hand, dangles from an antenna over an endless drop. And then Vader speaks the words that shatter Luke's identity. No, I am your father. Luke's scream of denial carries across the galaxy. Everything he believed was a lie. His heroic Jedi father was actually the Empire's enforcer. The man who trained him hid this truth. The order he was supposed to join was built on deception and half-truths. Leia feels his anguish through the Force. She does not yet know she possesses. The Millennium Falcon rescues him, but the rescue is only physical. Psychologically, Luke is devastated, lost. Everything he thought he knew about himself has been revealed as fiction. When he confronts Obi-Wan later, demanding the truth, the old Jedi offers more carefully constructed lies. What I told you was true, from a certain point of view. Anakin Skywalker was a good man who was seduced by the dark side. When he became Darth Vader, he destroyed who he had been. So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view. From a certain point of view, the phrase becomes Obi-Wan's shield, his way of admitting deception while denying responsibility, and he doubles down on the original teaching. You must face Vader again, and you must kill him. Only by destroying him can you save the galaxy. Kill his own father. That is the Jedi way. That is what Luke must do to complete his training. Commit patricide for the greater good. Embrace the same moral flexibility that let Mace Windu try to execute a defenseless prisoner. The vision shows Luke's return to Dagobah. Yoda is dying. 800 years of life finally ending. His last words to Luke are about facing Vader, about confronting the dark side, about understanding that the Force requires balance between light and dark. But then Yoda adds something crucial, something that suggests maybe, finally, he has learned. Luke, the greatest teacher failure is, it is the closest Yoda ever comes to admitting the Order's mistakes, to acknowledging that failure is not weakness but opportunity for growth, that the rigid perfection the Jedi demanded was always impossible. But it is too late. Yoda dies, becomes one with the Force, and Luke is left with conflicting instructions. Obi-Wan telling him to kill Vader, Yoda telling him that failure teaches, his own heart telling him there is another way. Luke chooses to trust himself. Not the teachings, not the ancient wisdom, himself. He surrenders to Vader, allows himself to be taken before the Emperor, believes that he can reach whatever remains of Anakin Skywalker beneath the mask. The throne room confrontation aboard the second Death Star becomes the ultimate test. Palpatine orchestrates everything brilliantly, forces Luke to watch his friends die, provokes him into fighting Vader, drives him toward the dark side through emotional manipulation. And Luke falls for it, fights his father with fury, channels his rage and fear, beats Vader down and cuts off his hand in an echo of his own dismemberment, stands over his defeated father with lightsaber raised, one strike away from killing him, from giving in to the same darkness that consumed Anakin. Palpatine encourages him. Good. Your hate has made you powerful. Now fulfill your destiny and take your father's place at my side. Luke looks at Vader's severed mechanical hand, then at his own mechanical hand. Father and son both maimed, both pushed toward darkness by manipulation and impossible choices. Both taught by Jedi who meant well but understood nothing about actual human psychology. And Luke makes a choice. Not the Jedi choice, not the Sith choice, a human choice. He throws away his lightsaber. I will never turn to the dark side. You have failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi like my father before me. Not like Obi-Wan, not like Yoda, like his father, acknowledging Anakin Skywalker's light side rather than just Vader's darkness, claiming connection rather than detachment, attachment rather than suppression. It is the most un-Jedi thing possible, and it saves the galaxy. Palpatine attacks with Force lightning, tortures Luke slowly, and Vader watches, torn between decades of service to his master and the sound of his son screaming, between the dark side that gave him power and the light side he thought he lost forever. Anakin Skywalker makes his choice, picks up the Emperor, throws him down the reactor shaft, saves his son, redeems himself, and dies in the process, the lightning having destroyed his life support systems. Luke removes Vader's mask, looks into his father's real face for the first and last time. Anakin smiles at him. At peace finally, forgiven by the one person whose forgiveness matters. You were right about me. Tell your sister you were right. Then he dies, returns to the Force, redeemed not through Jedi teaching, but through his son's refusal to follow Jedi teaching, through love, through attachment, through everything the Order spent 25,000 years claiming would lead to darkness. The Keeper speaks softly. Luke succeeded where all other Jedi failed, but not because he followed their wisdom, because he rejected it. Because he chose love over detachment, connection over suppression, humanity over philosophy. He saved his father and the galaxy by doing exactly what Yoda told Anakin never to do, by refusing to let go of someone he loved. The vision shows Luke burning Vader's armor on Endor, Obi-Wan, Yoda, and now Anakin appearing as Force ghosts. All three teachers reunited, all three watching the son who proved them wrong about everything that mattered. The celebration across the galaxy, the Empire defeated, the Sith destroyed, peace returning after decades of darkness. Luke stands at the center of it all, the last Jedi, the one who saved everyone by breaking every rule. But the holocron's light dims slightly. The Keeper's expression grows sad. This should be the end. The moment when the Jedi way transforms, when someone finally learns from all the accumulated failures. But Luke is 23 years old. He has had minimal training. He knows the Force but understands little about the Order's history. All he has are Obi-Wan's teachings, Yoda's cryptic wisdom, and ancient texts that survived the Purge. The vision shifts forward, years passing, Luke searching for Jedi artifacts, reading the old teachings, trying to understand what it means to be a Jedi, and inevitably he makes the same choice every other survivor has made. He tries to rebuild the Order, using the only blueprint he knows, the one that failed before. The Keeper's final words carry crushing inevitability. Luke had the opportunity to create something new, something better, something that learned from 250 centuries of mistakes. But how could he? He had no other teachers, no other example, just ancient texts written by the same Order that collapsed from its own contradictions. So he studied those texts, followed those teachings, and prepared to train a new generation. The holocron pulses. A new figure appears. A boy with dark hair and conflicted eyes, strong in the Force, carrying the weight of legacy in his blood. Ben Solo, Han and Leia's son, Luke's nephew, the next student who would be failed by a master who meant well but understood nothing about how to prevent repeating history. The cycle preparing to turn one more time. Ben Solo was 10 years old when his parents realized they could not handle him alone. The power in him was too great, too volatile. His emotions would manifest physically, objects floating when he was upset, lights flickering when he was angry, the Force responding to feelings he could not name or control. Han Solo did not understand the Force. Leia had her own connection, but no training to speak of. They needed help, and there was only one person in the galaxy who could provide it. Luke Skywalker, Jedi Master, hero of the rebellion, the man who redeemed Darth Vader and defeated the Empire. Ben's uncle, the natural choice to train their gifted son. The holocron shows their first meeting. Luke sees in Ben the same raw potential he saw in himself, the same hunger to understand the power burning inside, the same need for guidance, but Luke also sees something that terrifies him. The shadow of Vader, not metaphorical, actual darkness clinging to this child like smoke. Ben feels it too, his grandfather's presence, Darth Vader calling to him through the Force, through bloodline, through legacy he cannot escape. Ben Solo carries Skywalker power and Solo rebellion. He is capable of extraordinary good or catastrophic evil, and he knows it. Feels the pull in both directions, light and dark warring for his soul before he is even old enough to understand what that means. Luke takes him as a student, establishes a training temple on a remote world, gathers other Force-sensitive children, tries to recreate what he imagines the old order was, what Obi-Wan and Yoda described to him, a sanctuary for learning, a place where young Jedi could master their abilities away from the galaxy's corruption. But Luke only knows how to teach the way he was taught, through the texts he found, through the lessons Yoda gave him in compressed form, through principles that sounded wise but were never actually examined for their flaws. He teaches detachment, control, suppression of emotion, the same doctrine that failed Anakin, failed Obi-Wan, failed every Jedi who came before. Because Luke does not know, it failed. He thinks Anakin failed despite the teaching, not because of it. He believes the problem was implementation, not foundation. The vision shows Ben's training. He excels at first, powerful, dedicated, eager to prove himself worthy of his bloodline. But the other students sense the darkness in him, whisper about it, keep their distance. Ben becomes isolated, different, the Skywalker legacy making him special in ways that create loneliness rather than connection. And Luke watches, concerned, seeing the same warning signs he probably should have seen in himself decades ago. The frustration, the anger, the struggle with darkness. But Luke handles it the way Yoda handled Anakin, with surveillance, with caution, with hope that proper technique will purge the shadow. He never asks Ben what he is feeling, never creates space for honest conversation about the darkness, never says that struggling with both light and dark is normal, human, manageable. Instead, Luke's concern manifests as distance, as watching, as treating Ben like a problem to be solved rather than a person to be understood. The Keeper narrates the deterioration. Ben feels his master's fear, interprets it as lack of faith, lack of love. He is trying so hard to be good, to be worthy, and all he receives in return is suspicion. The other students avoid him. Luke watches him. No one sees Ben Solo. They only see Vader's grandson, the potential threat. Supreme Leader Snoke finds Ben, in this vulnerable state, an ancient dark side user who survived the Empire's fall, powerful, manipulative, patient. Snoke does not reveal himself directly, just whispers through the Force, offers what Luke never does, acceptance, understanding, permission to stop fighting himself. They fear you because you are powerful. Your master watches you because he knows you will surpass him. Your grandfather's strength flows through you. Why do you deny it? Why do you fight what you are? Ben resists at first, tells himself these are temptations to reject, but the voice is always there, validating, understanding, seeing him as powerful rather than dangerous, as special rather than flawed. And Luke remains blind to it all, focused on teaching, on maintaining the temple, on training multiple students while giving Ben just enough attention to monitor his darkness, but not enough to actually connect. The same mistake Obi-Wan made with Anakin, present but distant, caring but controlled. Years pass. Ben grows into a young man, strong, conflicted, powerful enough that Luke begins to worry seriously about what happens if Ben falls. The darkness in him has not diminished with training. If anything, it has grown, become more present, more seductive. Luke meditates on the problem, searches the Force for guidance, and one night he makes a decision. He will look into Ben's mind while the boy sleeps. See the true depth of the darkness. Understand what he is really dealing with. The vision shows Luke entering Ben's hut, his sleeping nephew peaceful in the dark. Luke reaches out through the Force, touches Ben's mind, and sees things that horrify him. Snoke's influence, deeper than Luke imagined, already corrupting, already turning. Luke sees visions of Ben's future, the destruction he will cause, the people he will kill, the darkness he will embrace. Luke sees the temple burning, his other students murdered, the careful work of years destroyed in a single night. And for one terrible moment, Luke Skywalker considers killing Ben Solo. His lightsaber ignites before the thought fully forms. Pure instinct, pure fear. The same fear that drove Anakin to darkness. The same fear that the Jedi always claimed to transcend. Luke stands over his sleeping nephew with an activated weapon. For perhaps 3 seconds, he genuinely considers murdering this boy to prevent the future he saw. Then Ben wakes. The Keeper's voice drops to a whisper. Imagine, you are sleeping, safe in your master's temple, under the protection of the galaxy's greatest Jedi, your uncle, your family, and you wake to find him standing over you, lightsaber ignited, death in his eyes. For 3 seconds, Luke Skywalker was going to kill Ben Solo. 3 seconds that destroyed everything. Ben's face shows betrayal beyond words, terror, rage, understanding that his worst fear has been confirmed. His master does not see him as a student to guide. Luke sees him as a threat to eliminate. The Ben reaches out through the Force, brings the roof down on Luke, buries his master beneath stone and timber, then runs outside, rage and grief, and betrayal churning into something darker, something irrevocable. The vision shows what happens next. Ben stands in the temple courtyard, other students emerging from their huts, confused, asking what happened. Seeing Ben's face and the collapsed structure, and making assumptions. Some students try to help, try to dig Luke out. Others grab lightsabers, defensive, scared. Ben can feel their fear, their judgment, their immediate assumption that he is the problem. And something breaks completely inside him. If they already think he is a monster, if even his own master cannot see him as anything but Vader's heir, then why keep fighting it? Why keep pretending he can be something he is not? The temple burns, students die. Some try to fight Ben in a cut down, others flee and he lets them go. Not because he is merciful, because he does not care anymore. The future Luke saw in his Force vision begins manifesting, not because it was inevitable, because Luke's fear of it made it real. Ben Solo leaves his uncle's temple and becomes Kylo Ren, takes the name of his grandfather's Sith philosophy, finds Snoke and pledges himself completely, embraces the darkness he spent years trying to suppress. Not because darkness is stronger, but because light offered him nothing but suspicion and isolation and betrayal. Luke digs himself out of rubble to find his life's work destroyed, his students dead or scattered, his nephew transformed into the very thing Luke feared most. And unlike Obi-Wan, who could at least blame external corruption, Luke knows this is his failure alone. He saw darkness in Ben and responded with fear, chose surveillance over support, let his own demons about Vader cloud his ability to simply see a struggling student and help. The Keeper speaks with devastating clarity. This is not just failure. This is generational trauma made manifest. Yoda failed Dooku. Dooku's fall contributed to Qui-Gon's death. Qui-Gon's death broke Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan's broken teaching destroyed Anakin. Anakin traumatized the galaxy and left Luke with impossible legacy. And Luke, trying desperately to do better than those who came before, repeated every single mistake. Different circumstances, same fundamental errors. The vision follows Luke's exile. He does not seek out Ben, does not try to fix what he broke. Instead, he flees, travels to Arch 2, the island where the first Jedi temple stands, and he goes there to die. Not metaphorically. Luke Skywalker, who saved the galaxy through hope and love, decides that the galaxy is better off without him, without the Jedi, without the endless cycle of masters failing students who then fail their own students. He cuts himself off from the Force, refuses to train anyone else, refuses even to help when the First Order rises under Kylo Ren's leadership. When Leia sends Rey to find him, Luke refuses to leave, refuses to fight, refuses to be Luke Skywalker anymore. It is time for the Jedi to end, he tells Rey. And he means it. The Jedi Order has had 25,000 years to prove their philosophy works. Instead, they have produced an unbroken line of failures. Vader, Kylo Ren, countless others whose names were lost to history, but whose falls were just as tragic. Resi argues with him, sees the hero she expected and finds only a broken old man who has given up. She cannot understand how Luke Skywalker, the legend, could abandon hope. But Luke understands something. Rey does not yet, that legends are lies, that the real Luke Skywalker is a man who failed his nephew the same way his masters failed him, that the Jedi way is fundamentally flawed and has been from the beginning. The vision shows Luke's daily routine on Ash 2, fishing, drinking green milk from alien creatures, deliberately making himself small, pathetic, anything to destroy the legend, anything to discourage Rey from believing the Jedi can be salvaged. Then Yoda appears, not as the wise master Luke remembers, but as the mischievous, chaotic Force ghost he should have been all along. And Yoda does something Luke never expected. He burns the sacred Jedi texts. Luke runs to save them, tries to enter the burning tree, but Yoda stops him, laughs, actually laughs at the destruction of ancient knowledge. Page-turners, they were not. Read them, have you? Wisdom they contained, yes, but also dogma, also rigidity, also the same mistakes repeated endlessly. Young Rey already possesses everything those texts contain. She needs not the books. She needs you, the you who failed and learned, not the you who tries to be perfect, Jedi. For the first time, Yoda admits the truth. The greatest teacher, failure, is we are what they grow beyond. That is the true burden of all masters. Luke stares at his old teacher. But I failed Ben, created Kylo Ren through my own fear. Lost Ben Solo you did, find him still. You might, but teach Rey, you must. Not the old way, not the failed way, your way. The way that saved your father when all Jedi wisdom said it was impossible. The vision shifts. Luke training Rey, not with ancient techniques, not with meditation and suppression, but with honest discussion, with admission of his failures, with permission to be human and Jedi simultaneously. Luke finally becoming the teacher he needed when he was her age. He reconnects with the Force, accepts that he cannot hide forever, that running from failure is just another form of failure. And when the First Order corners the Resistance on Crate, Luke makes his choice. He projects himself across the galaxy, confronts Kylo Ren on the battlefield, gives the Resistance time to escape, and he does it, knowing it will kill him, that using the Force at this magnitude will burn through what remains of his life. Luke's final words to Ben are not about killing him or redeeming him, just truth. I failed you, Ben. I'm sorry. Then he tells Rey through the Force that the Jedi will continue, but not as they were, as they should be, learning from failure rather than hiding it, embracing humanity rather than denying it. Luke Skywalker becomes one with the Force, dies looking at twin suns like the ones he watched from his uncle's farm decades ago, dies having finally learned what Yoda tried to teach him, that failure is not the end. That growth comes from accepting mistakes rather than denying them. But the question remains, will Rey, learn from all these accumulated failures? Will she build something better, or will she too fall into the trap of thinking that proper technique can overcome flawed foundation? The Keeper's voice carries one final judgment on Luke's story. He succeeded at the end, learned what needed learning. But Ben Solo paid the price for Luke's education, just as Anakin paid for Obi-Wan's, just as Qui-Gon paid for Dooku's, just as thousands of Padawans across millennia paid for the Order's refusal to examine their own teachings. The holocron pulses, the final testimony preparing to reveal itself. The deepest truth, the original sin that made all of this inevitable. Time to understand why the Jedi Order was always going to fail. Why no amount of good intentions could overcome a foundation built on denial of fundamental human nature. The Keeper leads you deeper into the vault, past the main chamber, past the holocrons you have already witnessed, toward a section sealed behind additional force barriers, ancient ones, powerful ones, placed here by council members who wanted these recordings preserved but hidden. What you have seen so far are the individual failures, the Keeper explains. Master failing Padawan, teacher unable to reach student, tragic, but potentially explainable as personal inadequacy. But that is not the truth. The truth is worse, more systemic, more damning. The barriers fall at the Keeper's touch. Beyond them lies a smaller chamber, darker, colder, filled with recording devices from different eras, holoprojectors, data chips, even older technologies you do not recognize. Centuries of documentation deliberately hidden from the Order itself. These are confessions, the Keeper says quietly, from masters who saw the pattern, who tried to change things, who were silenced or expelled or simply ignored until they gave up trying. Listen. The first recording activates a Jedi Master from thousands of years ago. His face shows exhaustion, defeat. He speaks directly into the recorder. My name is Vruk Lamar. I served on the Council during the Mandalorian Wars. I watched Revan leave the Order, watched Malak follow him, watched dozens of our finest Jedi abandon us because we refused to act while innocents died. And when I suggested we examine why our teachings keep producing students who leave or fall, the Council called me a heretic. They said questioning the code was questioning the Force itself. But the Force is not the code. The Force is life, and life is messy, emotional, attached. We take children at 4 years old, sever every bond they have, teach them that their natural feelings are corruption. Then we wonder why they break. The recording flickers. Vruk's voice grows more desperate. I propose changes. Let younglings maintain limited contact with families. Teach emotional processing instead of suppression. Create support systems for Padawans struggling with trauma or doubt. The Council rejected every suggestion, said tradition has served us for millennia, that changing the foundation would destroy what makes Jedi strong. But I have seen what our strength creates. Broken students, fallen masters. An endless cycle we refuse to examine because examination requires admitting fault. The recording ends. Vruk Lamar was never expelled, never fell to darkness. He simply gave up fighting, accepted that the Order would not change, spent his remaining years teaching the same methods he knew were flawed because the alternative was leaving and abandoning students to teachers with even less awareness. Another recording begins, this one more recent, a council meeting from just before the Clone Wars. You recognize the faces: Yoda, Mace Windu, Q, Adi, Mundi, Plo Koon, the masters who would lead the Order into its final catastrophe. They are discussing Qui-Gon Jinn, recently killed, his unorthodox methods under review. Master Jinn repeatedly defied council directives, Windu states. His Padawan Obi-Wan Kenobi exhibits some of the same independence. We must ensure his training of Anakin Skywalker adheres more closely to established protocol. Qui-Gon's methods effective they were. Yoda counters, results he produced. Question them we should not, simply because different they were. Results are not the only measure. Another council member argues. Discipline matters. Obedience matters. Obedience matters. Qui-Gon taught his Padawan to question authority. That questioning could lead to darkness, if unchecked. You watch them debate, not about whether Qui-Gon was right, but about how to prevent future masters from teaching the way he did, how to ensure conformity, how to eliminate variation from the teaching method. They discuss Anakin not as a child who needs help processing trauma, but as a problem requiring management, a risk to be monitored. At no point does anyone suggest asking Anakin what he needs, or supporting Obi-Wan, who is too young for the responsibility they are giving him, or examining why the Order's rigid structure keeps producing students who either break or rebel. The recording ends with a vote. Stricter oversight of Anakin's training. Regular reporting from Obi-Wan on his Padawan's progress. Surveillance disguised as concern. The Council building the prison that will eventually drive Anakin to Palpatine's arms. A new recording begins. This one is not official Council business. It is a private log. The voice belongs to Obi-Wan Kenobi. Recorded during his exile on Tatooine, years after everything fell apart. Year 7 of exile. I watched Luke grow. He is 12 now, strong in the Force. Curious, brave, everything Anakin was at that age, and I am terrified. Do I tell Owen to let me train him? Do I risk repeating the same mistakes? I failed Anakin because I followed the code too rigidly, because I taught suppression instead of understanding, because I was too young and traumatized to be anyone's master. Obi-Wan's recorded voice cracks. Even years later, the guilt is raw. But what else could I have done? I only knew what I was taught. Meditation, detachment, trusting the Force. Those lessons failed. Anakin failed me, failed the entire Order. Yet I have no other wisdom to offer. If I train Luke, I will teach him the same broken philosophy, because I know nothing else. And if I do not train him, he grows up powerless while the galaxy suffers under Vader's tyranny. The recording captures Obi-Wan's impossible position. He sees the flaws, understands on some level that the teachings themselves are problematic, but he has no alternative framework, no different method, just the hope that perhaps this time, with a different student in different circumstances, the old ways will somehow work. More recordings activate. A cascade of voices, masters and students across centuries. Some you recognize, most are anonymous, all telling variations of the same story. A Padawan describes feeling suicidal, explaining to her master that the constant suppression of emotion is making her feel hollow, empty, disconnected from herself. The master responds with more meditation, more trust in the Force, more assurance that these feelings will pass if she just maintains discipline. The Padawan's voice grows more desperate over subsequent entries, until finally there is just a note. She was found dead, cause unclear. The Council ruled it an accident, moved on. Another recording, a master explaining how he knows his Padawan is struggling, but cannot break protocol to help. The code forbids discussing personal matters. Emotional support is not part of Jedi training, so he watches his student deteriorate. Hopes meditation will solve problems that require actual human connection. His Padawan eventually leaves the Order, just walks away. The master records his confusion, his sense of failure, but never quite connecting that following the rules perfectly still produces broken students. The recordings blur together, decades of documented suffering, of masters who cared deeply but had no tools to help, of students who needed support but received only doctrine, of an institution that preserved every failure while learning from none of them. Then a recording appears that stops you cold. It is from Anakin Skywalker, not Vader. Anakin, recorded secretly sometime during the Clone Wars. I had nightmares again, about my mother, about Padme, about everyone I love dying while I stand helpless. I cannot tell Obi-Wan. He will just say to let go, to trust the Force, to train myself not to fear loss. But how do you not fear losing people you love? How is that even possible? The Jedi act like it is simple. Just meditate more, just suppress more, just be better at denying your own humanity. Anakin's voice shakes with frustration. Padme understands. The Chancellor understands. They do not tell me my feelings are wrong. They acknowledge that love and fear are real, that caring about people is not weakness. With them, I can be human. With the Jedi, I have to be perfect, untouchable, detached. I am trying. I genuinely am, but I do not think I can keep being two different people forever. Eventually, something will break. The recording ends. Dated roughly 2 years before his fall, Anakin predicting his own destruction, asking for help in the only way he knew how, recording it for himself, because he could not say it aloud to anyone in the Order. The Keeper speaks. That recording was found in the temple ruins after Order 66, sealed in Anakin's personal quarters. He was crying out, begging someone to see him, to help him, to tell him that struggling with the Jedi way did not make him evil, but no one heard. Or if they heard, they had no response except more of what was already failing. A final recording activates. This one is different. Not a confession or a log, a theoretical discussion. Multiple Jedi scholars debating the nature of attachment and why the Order forbids it. One scholar argues that attachment itself is not the problem, that humans are biologically wired for connection, that fighting fundamental neurology with philosophy is doomed to fail. She suggests the Order should teach healthy attachment, how to love without possessiveness, how to grieve without being destroyed, how to fear loss while not letting that fear control you. The other scholars reject this, say that any compromise with attachment is compromise with the dark side, that the purity of Jedi philosophy requires complete detachment, that masters who cannot achieve this simply need better discipline. The debate ends with the reformist scholar being reassigned, not punished, not expelled, just quietly moved to a remote temple where her ideas would not influence mainstream teaching, her proposals buried, forgotten. This happened again and again, the Keeper explains. Across centuries, Jedi who saw the problems, who proposed solutions, who tried to evolve the Order, all of them silenced, not through violence, through institutional inertia, through the weight of tradition, through the assumption that anything that worked for 20,000 years must be fundamentally sound. You stand in the chamber surrounded by testimony, by evidence of systemic failure spanning millennia, by the documented suffering of thousands who have failed by teachings that never changed. The Keeper's voice carries finality. This is the original sin, not that the Jedi were imperfect. All people are imperfect, but that they believed they had achieved perfection, that their way was the only way, that the Force demanded what their code prescribed. They took a philosophy developed thousands of years ago and froze it in amber, never questioning, never adapting, never acknowledging that perhaps human understanding of the Force evolves as humans themselves evolve. The recordings fade. The chamber grows quiet. You understand now. The failures were not personal, were not individual masters lacking skill or wisdom. The failures were built into the structure itself. An order that demanded members transcend their humanity could only ever produce humans pretending to be something they were not, until the pretending broke them. The Keeper gestures toward the exit. Come, one last thing remains, not hidden, not secret, just forgotten. The testimony of those who found another way, who succeeded not by following the teachings, but by trusting themselves. You follow, ready for whatever final truth awaits. The Keeper brings you back to the central chamber. The massive holocron still pulses at its center, but something has changed. The light it emits is no longer sickly or pained. It glows with a softer illumination, almost peaceful. You have seen the failures, the Keeper says. Every broken promise, every student lost, every master who tried their best and was not enough. But failure is not the end of the story. It is the middle. What matters is what comes after. The holocron activates one final time, but instead of visions of the past, it shows the present, Rey on Tatooine, standing before the last homestead where Luke grew up. She has just buried 2 lightsabers in the sand. Luke's and Leia's, laid them to rest with honor. A local asks her name. She hesitates. She is nobody, a scavenger from Jakku, granddaughter of Palpatine himself, carrier of the darkest bloodline in galactic history, but she has chosen differently, learned from Jedi living and dead, taken what was good in their teachings, and left behind what was broken. Rey Skywalker, she says, taking the name, claiming the legacy not of blood, but of choice, honoring the masters who failed, but kept trying, who learned even when learning came too late. The Keeper smiles sadly. She understands something it took the Jedi Order 25,000 years to learn. That family is not blood. That legacy is not destiny. That the darkness in your lineage does not determine who you become. Palpatine's granddaughter chose light. Vader's grandson found redemption at the end. The names we inherit matter less than the choices we make. The vision expands, shows Rey beginning her own journey as a teacher, not rebuilding the old order, not establishing temples with rigid hierarchies and ancient protocols, something smaller, more human. Students she teaches as individuals rather than vessels for doctrine. She has learned from every failure you witnessed tonight. From Dooku's idealism crushed by indifferent masters, from Qui-Gon's death, leaving Obi-Wan incomplete, from Obi-Wan's emotional distance destroying Anakin, from Anakin's fall creating Vader, from Luke's fear creating Kylo Ren, from all of it. Resi teaches connection alongside meditation, encourages questions instead of demanding obedience, acknowledges that fear and love and attachment are not weaknesses to overcome, but forces to understand and channel. She does not promise perfection, only growth, only the willingness to fail and learn and try again. The Keeper's voice grows warmer. This is what the Jedi should have been. Not warriors or monks or perfect crystallized beings, but guardians who understand that protecting life means embracing it, messiness and emotion, and all. The holocron's light shifts. Figures begin to appear, translucent, glowing. Force ghosts emerging from whatever realm they inhabit beyond death. And they are not separate, not isolated in their individual failures. They are together. Qui-Gon Jinn appears first, the maverick master who died too soon. His form solidifies as he speaks. I questioned the Order my entire life, wondered why we clung to rules that clearly were not working, but I never imagined another way was possible. I taught Obi-Wan to question while still operating within the broken system. That was my failure, not questioning enough. Not trusting myself enough to actually break free and build something better. His expression holds regret, but also peace. But Obi-Wan took my questions and passed them to Anakin. Anakin took them to Luke. Luke took them to Rey. Each generation understanding a little more, seeing a little further. My death was not meaningless. It planted seeds that took decades to grow. That is enough. Obi-Wan Kenobi materializes beside his old master. The two of them together again after so many years of separation. I spent my entire life thinking I failed Anakin, Obi-Wan says quietly. Replayed every conversation, every lesson, every moment I chose duty over connection. Tortured myself with the certainty that if I had just been better, Anakin would not have fallen. He looks at the vision of Rey teaching her students with patience and compassion. But I understand now. I was 25 years old, grieving, traumatized. Given responsibility I was not prepared for by an order that offered no support. I did not fail Anakin through lack of love. I failed him through lack of tools, through being taught a method that could not possibly work and believing it was my inadequacy when it did not. Obi-Wan's voice strengthens. I loved Anakin. He was my brother, my family, and that love saved him in the end. Not my teaching, not the code, but the love I passed to Luke, the attachment the Jedi forbade. That love brought Anakin back from darkness when nothing else could. Yoda appears, smaller than the others, ancient, carrying the weight of 900 years and the failure of an entire order. The greatest teacher failure is, say this I did. Mean it I did not. Not truly, not until too late did I understand. The old master's ears droop slightly. 800 years I trained Jedi. Thousands of students passed through my teachings. Most succeeded by the Order's measure, became knights, served the Republic, meditated properly, followed the code. But the ones who needed me most, the ones who struggled, them I failed. Yoda's eyes grow distant. Remembering, Dooku came to me with questions, with concerns about injustice, with passion for changing the galaxy, and I taught him to let go, to accept, to trust in the Force's will. Made him choose between his compassion and his place in the Order. Lost him I did because wisdom I mistook for rigidity. He looks at Qui-Gon, at Obi-Wan, at the assembled ghosts of failed masters. 900 years it took me to learn that the Force is life, that life requires emotion. That balance is not eliminating darkness, but understanding it, integrating it, dancing with it, rather than denying it exists. This should not have taken 900 years, should have been obvious from the beginning. Anakin Skywalker appears, not as Vader, as himself, whole, healed, free from the armor and the pain and the darkness that consumed half his life. His presence makes the chamber feel heavier. This man's choices shaped galactic history. His fall created an empire. His redemption destroyed it, and now he stands among the masters who failed him, no longer carrying anger or blame. I was the chosen one, he says simply, prophesied to bring balance to the Force. The Council thought that meant destroying the Sith, but balance is not victory of light over dark. Balance is holding both, understanding both, accepting that darkness exists within everyone, and that is not corruption, that is being alive. Anakin looks at Obi-Wan, the two of them meeting across the divide of death, with all deceptions and failures laid bare. You did not fail me, old friend. The Order failed us both. You were a child trying to raise a child. I was broken from the beginning. Neither of us had what we needed, but you loved me. That was real. That mattered. And your love passed through Luke, saved me when I had forgotten I could be saved. Obi-Wan's ghostly form trembles, decades of guilt releasing. I should have told you it was okay to be afraid, that loving Padme was not weakness, that the feelings you tried so hard to hide were normal and human and manageable. Yes, you should have, But you did not know that yourself. How could you teach what you never learned? The two embrace, master and student, brothers, finally at peace with the tragedy that bound them. Ahsoka Tano appears, not dead but manifesting through her deep connection to the Force. She stands apart from the others, the one who survived by leaving. I walked away from the Order, she says, and for years I thought that made me a failure. Thought I abandoned my master, betrayed my training, but leaving was the bravest thing I ever did. It was choosing myself over an institution that had already chosen to abandon me. She looks at Anakin with profound sadness. I could not save you. Tried to reach you years later when you were Vader. Tried to bring back the master who taught me to think for myself. But you were too far gone. Buried too deep in pain and regret and darkness. You did save me, Anakin replies. Not from Vader, but from believing I was unredeemable. You survived, became who you were meant to be without the Order restricting you. Proved that Jedi is not a title, but a choice. When Luke refused to kill me, when he claimed me as his father, he was following your example, choosing connection over doctrine. Luke Skywalker appears last, younger than when he died, full of the hope he carried before Ben Solo's fall broke him. He looks at all the assembled masters, his teachers, his family, the ghosts who shaped his understanding of the Force. I failed Ben, he says, without preamble, repeated every mistake you made with Anakin, saw darkness and responded with fear, watched instead of connecting. Let my terror of repeating history guarantee that I would repeat it. He looks at Rey's vision, this girl who succeeded where he failed, who learned from his mistakes fast enough to make different choices. But Ben found his way back. At the end he chose light, gave his life to save Rey, became Ben Solo again, instead of Kylo Ren. My failure was not the end of his story, just as your failures were not the end of mine. Luke's voice grows stronger, more certain. The Jedi way was flawed, the code was insufficient, the teachings were incomplete, but the ideal was good. Being a guardian, standing between innocence and harm, using power to protect rather than dominate. That part was always worth preserving. Yoda nods slowly. Teach that to Rey. You did. Before you died, the way that saved your father when all Jedi wisdom said it was impossible. Your way, not ours. The Force ghosts turn to face you. All of them, teachers and students. Masters who failed, and Padawans who fell, united finally in understanding that transcends the doctrines that separated them in life. The Keeper speaks one final time. This is the lesson. Not that the Jedi were evil, not that they should be forgotten, but that they were human, flawed, trying their best with inadequate understanding. They built a philosophy on denying fundamental truths about sentient psychology, and then acted surprised when it kept breaking people. The Keeper's form begins to fade. But failure teaches, pain instructs. Every broken Padawan, every devastated master, every tragedy across 25,000 years has brought the galaxy to this moment, where someone finally understands, where the lessons have been learned, where Rey Skywalker teaches the next generation differently. The vision of Rey teaching her students grows brighter, warmer. You see her listening to a young student describe their fear. Instead of telling them to suppress it, Rey acknowledges it, helps them understand where it comes from, gives them tools to process it rather than deny it. She is not perfect, still learning herself, still carrying trauma from her own childhood. But she is honest about that, shows her students that being a Jedi does not mean being flawless. It means being authentic, growing, choosing light even when darkness is easier. The Force ghosts begin to dissolve, returning to whatever cosmic realm they inhabit. But before they fade completely, they speak together. A chorus of voices spanning generations. We are what they grow beyond. That is the burden of all masters. And the gift. Our failures light the path forward. Our mistakes become their wisdom. The cycle breaks not through perfection, but through learning. The chamber grows peaceful. The holocrons dim to soft glows. The weight of all that accumulated pain begins to lift. You stand alone now. The keeper gone. The visions complete. But you are not unchanged. You carry these stories now. These failures, these hard-won lessons. And perhaps that is the point. Not to forget, not to pretend the Jedi were perfect, but to remember, to learn, to do better. The twin sons of Tatooine set in the vision before you. Rey watches them fade beyond the horizon where Luke once watched them rise and wondered about his future. The circle completes, the story continues. The Force flows on. Somewhere in the galaxy a child discovers they can move objects with their mind, feels the Force awakening inside them, and when they find a teacher, that teacher will have learned from 25,000 years of mistakes, will know that power without compassion creates monsters, that suppression without understanding creates time bombs, that love is not the path to darkness, fear of love is. The vision fades completely. You are back in the vault on Ossus, the ruins silent around you, the holocrons dim but preserved, waiting for the next seeker, the next student of history, the next person who needs to understand why the Jedi fell so that something better can rise. You walk toward the entrance, toward the surface, toward the stars visible through broken temple ceilings. The Force hums softly around you. Not demanding, not judging, just present, patient, eternal. The failures are real. The pain was genuine, but it was not meaningless. Every Padawan who fell taught the galaxy something about what not to do. Every master who tried and failed carved away one more layer of wrong answers until the right ones could finally emerge. Balance, not as the Jedi imagined it, not as eternal vigilance against darkness, but as acceptance, understanding. The willingness to hold light and shadow simultaneously and recognize both as necessary parts of being alive. You step out into Ossus night. Above you stars drift in their ancient patterns, galaxies turning slowly through the cosmic dance, the Force flowing through all of it, through the ruins, through you, through Rey teaching on some distant world. Through students yet unborn who will carry these lessons into futures you cannot imagine. The journey is complete. The archives are closed. The testimonies are heard. And in hearing them, perhaps honoring them, ensuring that all those failures were not in vain. Rest now. Let these stories settle into your mind like sediment drifting to the ocean floor. Let the weight of history become wisdom instead of burden. Let the failures of the past illuminate the possibilities of the future. The Force will be with you, always. If you found meaning in these stories, consider subscribing to continue exploring the hidden truths of the galaxy far, far away. More tales await, more secrets, more lessons learned through pain and transcended through understanding. But for now, rest. Dream of twin suns setting over desert worlds, of Force ghosts finding peace beyond death, of students finally receiving the teaching they deserve, of a galaxy learning slowly, painfully, beautifully. That wisdom comes not from denying our humanity but from embracing it fully. May your dreams be peaceful. May your rest be deep. May you wake with understanding that failure is not the enemy. Fear of failure is. The stars watch over you, the Force surrounds you, and somewhere in the spaces between atoms the spirits of broken masters and fallen students finally rest easy knowing their pain taught the galaxy to do better. Sleep now. The journey continues tomorrow, but tonight there is only peace, only the Force, only rest.